I never meant to stay that long in her kitchen. It started with a broken cabinet hinge, the kind of thing you tell yourself you'll fix in 2 minutes. She asked if I knew how to handle a screwdriver. I said yes too quickly, trying to sound useful. Truth is, I just wanted a reason to stand there, inside her world for a while. The light over her counter flickered, washing everything in and out of shadow. She leaned against the sink, arms folded, watching me work. Or maybe just waiting for me to admit I didn't know what I was doing. Her silence pressed harder than her words ever could. I was 22, still learning how to fill silence. She was, well, older. Not in a way that made her seem distant, though. More like every pause she took had weight, the kind you only earn after living long enough to regret something. The hinge refused to line up. My hand slipped, screwdriver clattering against the tile. I cursed under my breath, heat rushing to my face. She tilted her head, a half-smile tugging at her mouth. "You make everything complicated," she said, her voice low, almost amused. I wanted to defend myself, but what came out was sharper than I intended. Or maybe too simple. The words hung there, stupidly bold, and for a moment neither of us moved. She blinked once, slow, as if deciding whether to laugh or to let the silence stretch. My pulse thudded in my throat. I bent back over the cabinet, pretending to focus, though all I could think about was the way her nails tapped against the rim of her glass. A steady rhythm, deliberate, like she knew I was listening. "You don't have to fix it tonight," she said finally. "I don't mind." My voice cracked on the last word, betraying me. The truth, I wasn't fixing anything. I was prolonging the inevitable moment when I'd have to leave her kitchen, step back into the hallway, and become just her neighbor again. Her glass clicked onto the counter. She came closer, not enough to touch, but enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume, something warm, like vanilla burned low. "You always push harder than you need to," she murmured. I wasn't sure if she meant the hinge or me. My grip tightened on the screwdriver. I wanted to answer, but my throat locked. I only nodded, useless. Then, without warning, her hand brushed mine. Barely, just the lightest graze of skin. But it was enough to send a current straight through me. I froze, afraid that if I moved, the moment would break. She didn't pull away immediately. Her fingers lingered, then withdrew with deliberate slowness, as if she'd made a choice and then unmade it in the same breath. I looked up, searching her face for some sign of what it meant. Her eyes met mine, steady, unreadable. The kind of look that made you wonder if she already knew what you were thinking, if she'd known all along. The hinge creaked into place, finally catching. The sound startled us both. I set the screwdriver down too fast, metal ringing on tile. "Well," she said, almost lightly, "I suppose that's fixed." But her voice wavered at the edges, just enough for me to catch. I should have left then. Said goodnight, walked back to my side of the hallway, locked the door, and let the air between us settle back into something neighborly. Instead, I heard myself say, "Or maybe it's just beginning." And for the first time, she didn't look away. I should have gone home that night. I told myself I would. My hand was already on the doorknob when she spoke. "Wait," she said. Just that one word, soft but certain. I froze. She crossed the room and set her glass in the sink, not looking at me until the clink of it on porcelain had faded. "Could you?" She hesitated, then gestured toward the stack of unopened mail on her counter. "I keep putting it off. Could you sort through them? Just help me figure out which ones I shouldn't ignore." It was a simple request, but I knew better. No one asks their neighbor to open their bills at 11 o'clock at night. She wanted company, and I wanted any excuse to give it. I slipped off my jacket and pulled the pile toward me. The envelopes were ordinary enough. Insurance notices, credit card offers, a dentist reminder card with a cartoon tooth smiling too widely. But I noticed how her hands trembled slightly when she passed them over, how she steadied her fingers against the counter as though she didn't trust them. "Rough week?" I asked. Her laugh came too quick, brittle around the edges. "Rough year." That caught me. She'd never said much about herself before, not beyond casual hallway greetings. But now, in the quiet of her kitchen, her voice carried something raw. I didn't push. I just slid open the first envelope and scanned it, my eyes catching on numbers I didn't understand. My throat tightened. It wasn't my business, and yet I felt like I was trespassing somewhere more private than her kitchen, somewhere closer to her pulse. "You don't have to," she began, but I cut her off. "I want to." The words slipped out before I could think. Too blunt, too revealing. She looked at me then, really looked. Her gaze lingered in a way that made me feel both exposed and wanted, though I couldn't tell what she meant to give me. I shuffled papers to cover the heat rising in my chest. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed again, but this time her thumb rubbed slowly over the inside of her wrist, a nervous habit, maybe. I wondered if she even realized she was doing it. "You're kind," she said after a pause. I almost laughed. That's not usually what people call me. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, but her eyes didn't soften. "It's dangerous, being kind. People take advantage." She didn't mean me, not directly, but the words landed heavy between us. My pulse stuttered. I thought about how close I was to leaning across the counter, about the way her perfume still hung in the air, faint and steady. I thought about how wrong it would be. I stacked the last envelope neatly, lining the corners like a student trying to impress a teacher. "You'll be okay," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she reached across the counter, resting her hand lightly on my arm. Her touch was brief, barely there, but deliberate, enough to make me forget every reason I had to leave. "Stay a little longer," she whispered, and I knew I would. I don't know how long we stood like that, her hand on my arm, my breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds, but it felt stretched, as though the room itself had slowed down to watch us. I should have said goodnight. I should have pulled away, turned the knob, walked out. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Why me?" Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? You could have asked anyone to fix the cabinet. Or the mail. Why me?" Her lips parted, but no words came at first. She looked down at her hand, as if she hadn't realized she was still touching me. Slowly, deliberately, she withdrew it, fingers grazing the fabric of my sleeve one last time. "Because you don't ask questions," she said finally. But that wasn't true. I had 1,000 of them. Why she lived alone. Why her laughter always seemed to beat late. Why her eyes carried something that looked like regret. And, most of all, why she let me linger when she could have shut the door so easily. The air between us felt charged, too tight. I shuffled the stack of envelopes just to break the silence, though my hands shook. "I don't believe that," I said. Her gaze snapped back to mine. There was a flash of something. Anger, maybe, or fear. But then it softened into something else. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. The words should have sent me out the door. Instead, I stepped closer, barely a foot between us now. I could see the faint crease at the corner of her mouth, the way her pulse fluttered at her throat. My voice dropped lower than I intended. "Then tell me to go." She didn't. The silence roared louder than any answer could. My hand lifted, hesitant, trembling, before I caught myself. I wasn't sure what I meant to do. Touch her shoulder? Brush a stray lock of hair from her face? My fingers curled back, useless, but the wanting stayed. Just then, the sharp ring of her phone shattered the moment. She startled, blinking as if waking from a dream. I stepped back so fast my heel caught the edge of the rug. She glanced at the screen without picking up. The name on the caller ID lit briefly before she pressed the phone face down on the counter. I couldn't read the name, but I saw the way her jaw tightened. Whoever it was, it mattered. "Do you need to?" I started. "No." Her voice was firm, almost too quick. She slid the phone away, out of sight. Then, softer, "Not tonight." Her words left a space between us, fragile and charged. My chest rose and fell too fast. I wanted to believe she'd chosen me over whoever was on the other end of that call. I also knew how dangerous that thought was. We stood in the quiet again, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I thought about leaving, about preserving what was left of the boundary between us. But when her eyes lifted to mine, steady and unflinching, the thought dissolved. For the first time, I let myself wonder, really wonder, how far we might go before one of us finally stopped. I didn't expect to see her outside the apartment. But there she was, across the table at a small dinner with a few neighbors and mutual friends. The restaurant was dim, candlelight flickering against glasses, voices overlapping in a lazy Friday hum. She looked different here. Not softer, sharper. Her hair pinned back, jacket draped neatly over the chair, a small glass of wine cradled in her hand. She laughed when others did, but never too loudly, always a half-beat late. I couldn't keep my eyes off her, and I think she noticed. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself, stepping outside under the string lights that hung over the patio. I needed air. The hum in my chest hadn't left me since that night in her kitchen. The door clicked open behind me. "You don't like crowds," she said. Not a question. I turned. She leaned against the frame, glass still in hand, her posture casual, but her eyes searching. "I just needed a minute," I said. "From me?" she asked. The words knocked something loose inside me. I swallowed, wishing I could come up with a safer answer. "No, that's the problem." She froze, not outwardly, but in the way her glass hovered just short of her lips. Slowly, she lowered it. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I know." My voice cracked. I hated how young I sounded, but I couldn't take it back. "But it's the truth." The silence stretched, heavy with everything neither of us should have been admitting. Her eyes flicked away, toward the glow of the restaurant windows, then back to me. "You think I haven't noticed?" she whispered. The confession slipped out of her like a secret she hadn't meant to voice. My pulse hammered. For a moment, I almost reached for her, almost let the truth swallow me whole. Instead, I stuffed my hands into my pockets, grounding myself. "Then why let me keep coming around?" Her mouth opened, closed. She set the glass down on the ledge, steadying herself. "Because you remind me what it feels like to be seen." That stopped me cold. It wasn't playful or careless. It was raw, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard from her before. I wanted to answer, to tell her how much I thought about her, how every look she gave me carved deeper than the last. But the door opened again, one of the neighbors stepping out to make a phone call. The moment snapped. She straightened quickly, her face smoothing back into something polite, practiced. The man nodded at us, oblivious, and wandered a few steps away. I leaned closer, my voice low, urgent. "If you don't want me to say things like that, then tell me to stop. Right now." She didn't. Her eyes locked on mine, unwavering, every line of her face taut with conflict. And in that charged silence, everything we hadn't done yet burned hotter than anything we had. The night after the dinner, I told myself I wouldn't knock on her door. I told myself I'd let things cool, give us space before we said something we couldn't take back. But then I saw the envelope. It was slipped into my own mailbox by mistake, same last initial, different apartment number. I almost tossed it aside until I recognized her name on the corner. Out of habit, I glanced at the return address. My stomach dropped. A law office. Divorce proceedings. I didn't mean to read the rest, but the word finalization stood out, bold and inescapable. My chest tightened. Suddenly, every unfinished look, every hesitation, made sense. She wasn't just holding me at arm's length, she was bracing against the wreckage of someone else. That night, I stood outside her door too long, envelope in hand, rehearsing what I'd say. When I finally knocked, my throat was dry. She opened the door in a soft sweater, hair pulled back, no makeup. Not the woman from the dinner table. This was her unguarded, tired, human. "You got my mail," she said. Her eyes flicked to the envelope instantly, her shoulders stiffening. I nodded. It was in my box. I didn't. I stopped, because lying felt useless. I saw the return address. The silence that followed was brutal. Her jaw worked, but she didn't speak. She just reached for the envelope, and I hesitated before handing it over. Her fingers brushed mine, and I felt the tension pulsing there. Not attraction this time, but the raw need to hide. "You weren't supposed to see that," she murmured. Something in me cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked up sharply, as if I had no right to ask. Maybe I didn't, but the words had already torn out of me. "Because it's not your burden," she said, her voice low, fierce. "Because I'm already drowning in it." I wanted to step forward, to anchor her somehow. Instead, I gripped the doorframe. "You don't have to do it alone." Her laugh was bitter, breaking. "You think you're saving me? You're a boy. You don't even know what it costs." The word boy cut deeper than I expected. My throat burned, but I held her gaze. "Then let me learn. Let me at least try." For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Fear, longing, maybe both. She pressed the envelope flat against her chest, as though to shield herself. And then the sound of footsteps in the hallway broke everything. Someone passing by, too close, pausing as if they'd overheard. We both froze, guilty in a way that had nothing to do with what we'd actually done. The footsteps faded, but the damage lingered. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." But she didn't close the door. And in that small, open gap between us, the choice of what came next hung heavy. Fragile as glass, impossible to ignore. I didn't plan on knocking again. After that night, after the envelope, I told myself the distance would be safer. For her, for me, for the parts of us we hadn't destroyed yet. But distance didn't work. Not when I thought about her every time the hallway light flickered, or when I caught the faint smell of her perfume drifting out as she left her apartment in the mornings. Obsession, maybe, or something harder to name. So I went. Midnight, rain dripping from my jacket, my pulse hammering against my ribs. I stood there, fist hovering, before finally knocking. She opened the door slowly, as if she'd expected me. No surprise in her eyes, only exhaustion and something heavier. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered again, but softer this time. "I know." My voice shook. "But I can't stay away." Her breath caught, almost a flinch. She stepped aside, wordless, and I followed her in. The room was dim, a single lamp glowing, the kind of light that makes shadows look sharper than they are. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. She sat at the edge of the couch, clutching her sleeves, and I stayed standing, rainwater dripping onto the carpet. "Finally," she said, "do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" The words cracked something open inside me. I dropped my jacket onto a chair, stepping closer. "Probably the same thing you're doing to me." Her eyes flashed, torn between anger and something softer. "You're too young to carry this. You'll hate me for it someday." I shook my head. "I don't care how young I am. I care that it's you." She closed her eyes, pressing her palms together like she was praying. When she opened them again, tears lined the corners. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to give you what you think you want." I knelt in front of her, not touching, just close enough to feel the heat between us. "Then just tell me the truth. Whatever it is. Stop holding it back." Her lips trembled. She looked at me like she wanted to run, like she wanted to pull me closer at the same time. And then, finally, she said it. "I haven't let anyone close since him. I thought I couldn't. But then you." She broke off, shaking her head. "You made me feel alive again, and I hate you for it. And I need you for it." The confession hit harder than any kiss could have. My chest ached with the weight of it. I reached out then, taking her hands. She didn't pull away. For a moment, the world narrowed to just that. Our fingers tangled, the quiet thrum of rain against glass, her eyes locked on mine. I could have leaned in. God, I wanted to. But instead I whispered, "Then don't shut me out." Her answer was silence, but she didn't let go of my hands. And in that silence, everything changed. Not solved, not safe, but no longer hidden. We didn't kiss that night. I thought we might. Thought the moment was pulling us there, but it never did. Instead, we sat together on her couch, hands still clasped like the world outside might disappear if we just held on tightly enough. When the rain finally eased, I stood to leave. She followed me to the door, neither of us knowing what to say that wouldn't ruin what had just been spoken. Her voice broke the silence first. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost for good." I turned, confused. "Hope," she said simply. Then, softer, "But I can't ask you to wait for me to become someone new. That wouldn't be fair." Her honesty was a knife and a bomb all at once. I wanted to argue, to tell her I didn't care about fair. But for the first time, I saw how much she meant it. How much she needed the space to forgive herself before she could give anything to me. I nodded slowly, though my chest ached. "Then I'll carry it with me," I said. "That hope, whether you want me to or not." Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, gratitude, maybe love. She reached up, fingertips brushing my cheek in the gentlest of touches. "Don't let me ruin you," she whispered. "You won't," I whispered back. And then I left, the hallway colder than I remembered, though my hands still burned with the memory of hers. Weeks passed. We didn't pretend anymore when we crossed paths in the building. We didn't linger in silence, didn't fumble excuses for why we were standing too close. Instead, there was acknowledgement in every glance. A quiet truth. Something had happened, and it had changed us both. For me, it was the first time I understood that love wasn't always about claiming or keeping. Sometimes it was about learning how to see someone, really see them, and letting that be enough. For her, maybe it was realizing she wasn't as alone as she thought. That even in the wreckage of old promises, someone could look at her and not flinch. Did we end up together? That's the question everyone would want answered. But life doesn't always give you a clean ending. Some nights I still hear her laugh through the walls. Some mornings she still brushes past me in the lobby, her smile small but real. And maybe that's all it ever needed to be. Two people changed by the spark between them, even if the fire never burned the way we thought it might. Speech balloon, what do you think? Did they make the right choice by holding back? Or should they have crossed that line? Backhand index pointing right, did you enjoy this story? Backhand index pointing right, what kinds of stories would you like to hear next?